My name is Elena Carmichael, 22 years old. I was standing in the auto parts aisle at work, restocking brake pads and pretending my life wasn't stuck in neutral when my world imploded on a Tuesday morning in October. My phone rang with an unknown number, and I almost let it go to voicemail. Then something in my chest twisted, and I answered. "Is this Elena Carmichael?" a woman asked. "Yes." "This is St. Mary's Hospital. Your father, Raymond Carmichael, was brought in from his job site. He's had a cardiac event. You need to come now." Cardiac event. The words didn't land right. They floated, surreal, above me, like they were meant for someone else. By the time I got to the hospital, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice. The ICU smelled like disinfectant and fear. A doctor with tired eyes and a plastic badge met me in a small consultation room. "Your father collapsed at the construction site," he said gently. "Massive heart attack. We've stabilized him for now, but he needs emergency bypass surgery." "Okay," I said, because what else was there to say? "Then do it, please." The doctor hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. "Our billing department has informed us," he said carefully, "that your father's insurance lapsed 3 months ago. When his company downsized and shifted staffing, his coverage fell through the cracks." A second person entered the room, a billing coordinator, tablet in hand, voice professional but not unkind. "We need a $47,000 deposit before we can schedule the operation," she explained. "Without it, we're only authorized to provide stabilizing care." Stabilizing care. I'd heard that phrase before. I was 8 the first time it tried to kill someone I loved. Mom's brain cancer had eaten everything. Her memory, her strength, our savings, our house. The bills piled up as fast as the chemo drips. Stabilizing care meant they would keep her comfortable while she slipped away because there wasn't enough money to fight for her. Now history was repeating itself. Same fluorescent lights, same hollow sympathy, same sinking feeling that the universe was playing a sick rerun of a show I'd already watched to the end. 47,000, I repeated, the number catching in my throat like broken glass. "We can discuss payment options," the coordinator said. "Loans, charity programs, crowdfunding." "I don't have that kind of time," I snapped, then immediately regretted the edge in my voice. None of this was her fault. She softened. "I'm sorry, I really am, but without the deposit, the surgeon's hands are tied." Dad raised me alone after Mom died. No remarrying, no girlfriends moving in, no new family to replace the one we lost. Just him working himself into the ground to keep us afloat. 40 years in construction. Early mornings, late nights, calloused hands, bad knees, a back that complained every time he stood up. He'd always said he'd rest when things got better. They never did. He just got older. I'd been doing my part, working at an auto parts store, living in a studio apartment that was basically a closet with a hot plate, ramen for dinner, thrift store jeans, no vacations, no splurges. My entire savings account had $3,402. Dad's checking account had $312 and some change. We'd sold Mom's jewelry years ago, the last physical pieces of her we had. I spent the next 48 hours chasing miracles that weren't interested in being caught. Banks? Laughed politely at a 22-year-old with no credit and no collateral asking for $50,000. Charities? "We're so sorry. Due to demand, our emergency fund is depleted." Relatives? Dad's brothers had their own disasters. A layoff, a wife on dialysis. My boyfriend, Mark, called from a double shift 2 states away, voice full of worry and helpless apologies. "I'm trying to get coverage to come down there," he said. "I swear, Lena, I'm trying." His ex, Brianna, posted some passive-aggressive nonsense on social media about people turning tragedy into attention that mutual friends sent me screenshots of. I didn't have space in my brain to be angry. I set up a GoFundMe, wrote and rewrote the description until I could barely see the screen through my tears, posted it everywhere, begged people to share. 48 hours later, it had raised $1,200. Every hour that passed without surgery meant more damage to Dad's heart. The nurses stopped meeting my eyes when they walked by. I recognized the look on their faces. I'd seen it when Mom was dying. That quiet professional pity that says, "We've watched this movie before. We know how it ends." By Thursday night, I had hit the wall. I sat in the hospital cafeteria at 2 in the morning, staring at my phone like maybe it would magically show me an answer if I just refreshed my banking app enough times. Maybe I could sell my car, max out credit cards, sell my blood, sell everything in my apartment, I did the math 100 different ways. It never added up to $47,000. The vending machine hummed. The fluorescent lights buzzed. The air smelled like burnt coffee and bleach. A janitor mopped the far corner, humming softly to himself. Somewhere above me, machines were keeping my father alive while the clock stole what was left of his chances. A man in work coveralls sat down across from me. I didn't look up. I didn't have the energy for small talk or sympathy. Then he spoke. "You're Carmichael's kid," he said. Not a question, a statement. I blinked, lifted my eyes. He was maybe 60, weathered hands wrapped around a styrofoam coffee cup, work boots stained with dried concrete, gray hair escaping from under a faded baseball cap, lines etched deep around eyes that had seen too many hard days. "Do I know you?" I asked hoarsely. "Name's Tobias," he said. "Worked with your dad on the Morrison project last summer. Heard about what happened." I gave a small, exhausted nod. Another well-wisher. Another person here to offer thoughts and prayers and nothing that would move the decimal point in my bank account. "Look," I said, voice frayed. "I appreciate you coming down, but I know you don't know me," he interrupted gently, "but I got something I've been carrying around a long time. Been waiting for the day I could use it right." He pulled something from his pocket, a folded check. He placed it on the table between us like it might explode. The paper looked worn, like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. My hand shook as I reached for it, half expecting it to vanish when I touched it. The amount was written in careful, blocky letters. 47,000. My vision blurred. "This isn't real," I whispered. "It's real," Tobias said quietly. "And it's yours." My throat closed. I don't understand. Why would you— "Your dad saved my life 15 years ago," he said, staring into his coffee. "Found me on the Riverside Bridge in the middle of a storm. I was drunk, out of work, wife gone, kids wouldn't talk to me. I was ready to jump. Rain on a dark river. A man on a bridge. My dad pulling over when most people would have driven past. He stayed there 3 hours," Tobias continued, "soaked to the bone, talking to me like I wasn't trash, like I was worth something. Got me off that rail, drove me home, gave me a card for a meeting, a clinic, told me if I showed up, he'd be there." He swallowed. And he was. Tears spilled onto my cheeks before I could stop them. Dad had never mentioned any of this. "Of course he didn't," Tobias said, like he could read my thoughts. "That's who Ray is. He don't make a big show of doing right. He just does it." He nudged the check closer with 2 fingers. "I've been sober 14 years now, built my own contracting business, got my kids back, got a wife who ain't afraid of me no more. Every house I've framed, every paycheck I've earned, I owe to that night on the bridge." "I can't take this," I choked. "It's too much. This is your money." "Girl, listen to me," he said, voice suddenly firm. "Your dad gave me everything. My life, my family. This," he tapped the check, "this is just numbers. I've been waiting 15 years to pay this debt. Thought maybe I never would. Then I heard he was in here. That was my sign." I stared at the check, then at him, then back again. "If I don't do this," Tobias said softly, "then that night on the bridge was just a nice story. I need it to be more than that." Something in me broke open. The resistance, the pride, the fear, I let it go. For the first time in days, I let hope in. My fingers closed around the check. "Thank you," I whispered, the words too small for what he was giving us. "You go get that surgery scheduled," Tobias said, standing. He placed a rough, gentle hand on my shoulder. "Ray's got more work to do in this world." I ran to the billing office, tears blurring the numbers on the forms. The night coordinator eyed the check skeptically until she verified the funds. Her entire demeanor shifted. "We'll get the team ready," she said. "They'll take him to prep within the hour." An hour later, I stood outside the operating room doors, watching them wheel my father away. The last thing I saw before the doors swung closed was his hand, pale against the white sheet. He had no idea a man he saved on a bridge might have just saved him back. The surgery lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of pacing. Sterilized hallways that smelled like bleach and despair. 8 hours of plastic chairs digging into my spine while the clock above me ticked in slow motion. 8 hours of replaying Tobias's story in my mind. My father on a rainy bridge, saving a stranger with nothing but compassion and stubbornness. Around hour 2, a man walked into the waiting room, then another, and another. Work boots, calloused hands, weathered faces. One by one, construction workers from half the city drifted in, as if pulled by an invisible thread, Are you Elena? The first man asked. He had a graying beard and eyes that carried too many storms. Yes, I whispered. He sat beside me with a groan. Name's Charlie. Your dad found me passed out drunk in my truck behind a 7-Eleven 10 years back. Drove me to detox. Sat with me the whole night. His voice cracked. Didn't tell a soul. Not even my crew. Before I could process his words, another man approached, Miguel, holding a thermos of coffee. Your father helped my family when we almost got deported, he said quietly. Paid for our lawyer, wrote letters, spoke in court. We are citizens now because of him. I stared at him, stunned. He never told me any of this. Miguel nodded sadly. He is humble man, maybe too humble. More men arrived. A young guy named Trevor, maybe 22, fidgeted nervously. Your dad caught me stealing tools from a job site when I was 17, he admitted. Instead of turning me in, he hired me. Spent months teaching me wiring and safety codes. I run my own electrical company now. He looked down. I owe him everything. My throat tightened, because I was starting to understand something I had never seen clearly before. My father didn't just work construction. He repaired people. Not with nails or concrete, but with second chances. By hour 5, the waiting room overflowed. 27 men in total. Some in uniforms, some in coveralls, some in clothes that smelled like fresh lumber and dust. All united by one truth. Ray Carmichael had saved them. Near hour 7, Mark finally burst into the room, my boyfriend, breathless, hair windblown from driving 4 hours straight. Elena, he said, rushing toward me. I'm here. I'm sorry it took so long. I melted into his arms, even as exhaustion pulled on every bone in my body. But over his shoulder, I noticed her. His ex-girlfriend, Brianna. Not here physically, thank God, but appearing on my phone screen in a fresh notification. A new message, directed at me. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Everything about the timing, her predictable cruelty, was enough to sour the air. Not now, I thought, please, not now. I shoved my phone into my pocket and pressed my face into Mark's jacket, inhaling the scent of sawdust and motor oil. He still smelled like the shop where he worked. Familiar. Steady. I'm right here, he murmured. We're going to get through this. A nurse approached, then, pulling a mask down from her face. Ms. Carmichael, the surgeon will be out shortly. The room froze. Silence rolled over us. Every man sitting straighter, eyes fixed on the door. When Dr. Hendricks stepped out, fatigue etched every line of his face. He pulled off his cap. The world slowed. The surgery went perfectly, he announced. I gasped, my knees nearly buckling as the men around me released a collective breath. Your father's heart is strong, the doctor continued. He should make a full recovery. The waiting room erupted in applause. Loud, rough cheers. From men who had come prepared to mourn, but now clapped like they were celebrating the birth of a child. Charlie wiped his eyes. Told you your old man was tougher than he looks. Miguel handed me the thermos. Drink, you need strength too. Trevor hugged me awkwardly. Your dad's a legend. Of course he pulled through. They meant it, every word. When I finally saw Dad 2 days later, pale but alive, he blinked at me like he couldn't fully believe it either. Elena, he whispered, did we make the house payment? I laughed and cried at the same time. Dad, don't worry about money. He frowned. That surgery must have cost... Someone took care of it, I said softly. His eyes filled with tears. Who? Tobias, I told him. He said you saved his life on a bridge. Dad's lips trembled. Tobias Henderson. He whispered the name like it was a prayer. I remember him. Broken man. Thought I failed him when he didn't take my help. You didn't fail him, I said. You saved him, and he came back to save you. Dad covered his face, sobbing quietly. I'd only seen him cry twice before, once the night Mom died, and once on my high school graduation day. For an hour, I told him about every man who had shown up. Charlie, Miguel, Trevor, the others. Dad kept shaking his head in disbelief. I was just doing what felt right, he kept saying. Exactly, I whispered, and it came back to you. The recovery was slow. Long days of cardiac rehab, careful monitoring, nurses adjusting machines, and me learning how to lift him without pulling at the surgical scar. Every day brought someone new to visit, neighbors, coworkers, people whose names I didn't recognize but whose stories made my chest ache. Mrs. Patterson brought soup. Your father shoveled my driveway for 12 years. Frank brought newspapers and a chess set. He drove me to dialysis every Thursday. Then came the most unexpected visitor of all. A teenage girl walked in, 16 maybe, holding an older woman's hand. Hi, the mother said softly. My name is Patricia. This is my daughter Zoe. Dad frowned, confused. You don't know us, Patricia said. But 5 years ago, we were in a car accident. Our car slid into a ditch, filled with water. My heart slowed. Your father, she continued, voice breaking, crawled into that car and pulled my daughter out first. Then me. He almost passed out from the smoke. Zoe stepped forward, eyes wet. I wanted to thank you. I'm alive because of you. Dad stared at them like he was seeing ghosts. I barely remember that night. You were unconscious when the EMTs arrived, Patricia said. You saved us. We needed you to know that. Dad cried again, quiet, shaking sobs. So did I. A week later, Tobias showed up on our porch again. Dad was sitting in a rocking chair, staring at the sunset, hands folded in his lap. I got a proposition for you, Tobias said, dropping into the chair next to him. My business is booming. I need someone who knows quality work, someone who can manage crews, deal with clients. I need a partner. Dad blinked. Tobias, I can't lift anything heavier than a coffee mug. I can't go back to construction. Who said anything about swinging hammers? Tobias snorted. You'll be in the office. I'll handle the heavy stuff. Dad stared at him, eyes filling again. You don't have to. Yes, Tobias said firmly. I do. And just like that, a new chapter began. A new business, a new purpose, a new life. Carmichael and Henderson Construction was born on our front porch, under a sky that looked like it had been painted with hope. And none of us had any idea just how far those ripples would go. Carmichael and Henderson Construction began the way most important things do, quietly, almost accidentally, without any grand announcement or ribbon-cutting ceremony. Just two men sitting at my father's kitchen table, sketching a business plan on the back of a diner napkin while I refilled their coffee mugs. Dad couldn't swing a hammer anymore, not after the bypass surgery, but he could manage people. He could talk to clients, draw up plans, solve a problem with nothing more than intuition and 30 years of experience. Tobias handled the physical side. They balanced each other perfectly. Their first project came from a woman named Diana, a single mother recently laid off from her nursing job. Her roof leaked. Her furnace was dying. Her electrical panel buzzed ominously. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in 1 month. I can pay some, she said, voice cracking. Just not all of it right away. Dad smiled at her, the way he used to smile at me when I came home from school scared about bills. We'll work it out, he said. Pay what you can, when you can. She burst into tears, the kind of cry that comes from a place deeper than gratitude, somewhere close to relief and humiliation and hope. They fixed everything and refused to take $1 more than her first payment. Word spread fast. Within weeks, Carmichael and Henderson had a waiting list of families needing help. Broken furnaces, collapsing porches, termite-eaten floors, roofs threatening to cave in with the next storm. The business exploded so quickly Tobias joked we needed 2 of him. We hired our first employee, Danny, the ex-con my father had once taken a chance on. Then Antonio, Miguel's son, fresh out of trade school. Then Trevor, the former teen thief turned electrician. Each hire brought its own story, its own ripple from something my father had done years earlier. But success has enemies, and we met ours the day we bid on the contract to renovate the new community center. Bill Hartley, a seasoned contractor with a spotless reputation and an ego sharp enough to cut steel, stood up in the council meeting and practically spit in our direction. This isn't fair competition, he snapped. They're giving away free labor. They're undercutting rates by taking charity cases. It's unethical. Tobias stepped forward. We do paying jobs and community work. One funds the other. That's not the point, Hartley shot back. It creates an uneven playing field. Their charity work is illegal under city contracting standards. My father, pale from months of recovery, but steadier than I'd seen him in years, stood up calmly. Mr. Hartley, he said, we're not undercutting anyone. We're investing in our community. We're showing families they matter. The murmurs in the room suggested many agreed. Hartley filed an official complaint anyway. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday, one day before bids were finalized. The night before the hearing, I found Dad at the kitchen table, surrounded by paperwork, letters, old invoices, and medical bills. He looked exhausted in a way I hated. What if they're right, he whispered. What if we misunderstood the rules? What if I put Tobias's business at risk? You helped dozens of families, I told him. You gave them hope. Hope doesn't override city ordinances, he said weakly. That's when the doorbell rang. It was Elena Rodriguez, 19, 7 months pregnant, the young woman whose apartment my father and Tobias had rebuilt from the ground up. Her daughter, Isabella, was now almost 3. Elena stood there holding a folder. I heard about the hearing, she said. I thought you might need this. Inside the folder were letters. Dozens. Handwritten, typed, printed, folded. Testimonies from people Dad had helped. I collected them, she said shyly. Everyone wanted to come speak, but Miss Maria from the shelter said you might need written proof too. Dad opened the first letter with trembling hands. It was from Diana, the single mom with the leaky roof. She wrote about how the repairs had let her keep her house, how she'd gone back to nursing school, how she now worked at a pediatric clinic. The second letter was from Trevor, the third from Antonio, then one from Patricia and Zoe, then Frank from dialysis, then Mrs. Patterson, the widow whose driveway Dad had shoveled for 12 winters. Each letter felt like a heartbeat. You showed up for us. You saved us. You believed in us. Because of you, we have a future. Dad cried halfway through the stack. The hearing room was packed the next morning. Hartley and two other contractors sat stiffly on one side with legal pads and expressions like they'd bitten into lemons. Our side was overflowing. Elena Rodriguez standing beside me with Isabella on her hip. Danny, Trevor, Antonio, Miguel, Patricia, Zoe, Frank. Families I'd never even met. The city attorney read the complaint, all sterile legal jargon designed to choke out emotion. Then Councilmember Devin Chen stood. I know Ray Carmichael, he said. He helped my family. He helped many families in this room. Please allow these people to speak. One by one they stood. Elena, Diana, Trevor, Antonio, Patricia, Zoe, even Frank, frail but determined. Each testimony was raw and emotional, stories of survival, gratitude, second chances. Elena's voice broke as she held her daughter. This man gave my baby a safe place to sleep, she said. What price do you put on that? Hartley visibly squirmed. When the testimonies ended, the room fell silent. The city attorney looked uncomfortable. Mr. Hartley, do you still wish to proceed? Hartley's jaw worked. We just wanted to ensure fair business practices. Janet Walsh, another council member, leaned forward. What would be fair recompense for saving a child's life, or preventing a family's deportation, or a man's alcohol relapse? Can you quantify the social value of that? Hartley had no answer. Complaint dismissed. Carmichael and Henderson awarded the community center project. The entire room erupted in applause. Dad's shoulders shook with relief. And for the first time in months, I saw hope settle back into his eyes, like light returning to a house that had gone dark. The community center rose from the ground the way hope does, slowly at first, then all at once. Steel beams, fresh concrete, windows that caught the morning sun like polished silver. I visited the site almost every day, not because I was officially part of the company, but because I couldn't look away from what my father and Tobias had built from one impossible miracle. They hired more workers, more families asked for help, more stories emerged, stories of lives my father had touched long before I ever knew what he carried inside him. By the time the community center opened, Carmichael and Henderson Construction wasn't just a business. It was a movement, a ripple that wouldn't stop widening. And somehow, I had become part of that ripple too. But not everyone was happy about it. Mark, my boyfriend, had tried. He really had. He was sweet and steady, with calloused hands and a shy smile. But he wasn't used to a relationship built around crisis. You're exhausted, he said one night, rubbing the back of his neck while I sorted invoices Dad couldn't type with his healing chest. You're taking care of him, the business, the house, and I'm just here. I need you here, I told him gently. That's the point. But he looked away, jaw tightening like someone pulling a frayed thread. And of course, like clockwork, his ex, Brianna, slithered back into our orbit. She texted him at midnight. She's using this whole storyline to keep you emotionally trapped. She posted online. Funny how some girls turn tragedy into personality. Then she messaged me directly. You're overwhelming him. He deserves someone who isn't drowning. I deleted the messages, but they left bruises. Because a small part of me believed her. I was drowning. In work, in fear of losing Dad. In this tornado of strangers whose lives suddenly intersected with mine. But I kept going. Not out of strength, but because there was no alternative. 2 months after the community center opened, a woman named Elena Rodriguez, now thriving, now confident, now the one giving help instead of asking for it, burst into our office holding a newspaper. You're on the front page, she squealed. Dad squinted at the headline. The Carmichael Model. How 2 men rebuilt a community with kindness. A reporter had written a full feature story. Pictures, interviews, statistics showing the economic and emotional ripple effects of their work. Tobias stared at the article like it was written in hieroglyphics. Dad just whispered, This can't be real." But it was. Requests started pouring in. Contractors from other cities wanted to learn the model. Churches asked for guidance. Medical professionals reached out about housing initiatives. Nonprofits called, hoping to replicate the same magic. Then came the message that changed everything. A teenage girl named Emma Wilson emailed us from Montana. "I'm 16, and I live in a town where there is no hope," she wrote. "We watched your story in school. I've been thinking of dropping out, but your work made me believe kindness can change things. I started helping my neighbors. Now other kids are helping too. Thank you." I read that paragraph 3 times before the weight of it hit me. A girl hundreds of miles away was choosing to stay alive in a place that had given up on her because of a moment on a bridge 15 years ago. I showed Dad the email. He sat down slowly. He didn't speak for a long time. "Never thought," he whispered, "that something so small could stretch that far." I squeezed his hand. Maybe that's the point. Meanwhile, Mark watched all of this from the periphery, impressed, proud, but also shaken. He finally said the words I'd feared. "Elena, I don't know where I fit anymore." "Here," I insisted. "With me. Nothing has changed." But everything had. He wasn't wrong about that. And when Brianna accidentally tagged him in another passive-aggressive post about toxic trauma bonding relationships, he didn't defend me immediately. He didn't join her either. He just froze. That silence hurt more than if he'd shouted. I pulled back, focused on Dad, focused on the business, focused on the people we were helping. If Mark needed time, he could have it. The world didn't pause just because my heart did. Months passed. The business grew. Emma's volunteer group expanded. Elena Rodriguez got into nursing school. Trevor opened a second office. Miguel's son started his own carpentry company. The community center became a place of rebirth. Classes, job fairs, after-school programs, cooking nights led by grandmothers teaching recipes from their home countries. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, Mark showed up at my door. He looked nervous, apologetic, like someone who'd missed the last bus home and was afraid the station was closed. "You were right," he said simply. "She hates how strong you are. I was too afraid to admit it." He held up his phone. Brianna blocked. Permanently. "I want to be part of your life," he said. "Not the part that weighs you down. The part that helps you lift everything." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was honest. And honesty is its own kind of oxygen. We moved slowly, carefully, intentionally. Finally, years after Dad's heart attack, we found ourselves sitting together on the porch swing, watching the sun melt into the horizon. Dad's hair was whiter, his face more lined, but his eyes, those calm, blue, steady eyes, still held the same spark. "You know what I think about sometimes?" he said softly. "What?" "That night on the bridge. If I'd kept driving, Tobias wouldn't be here. The business wouldn't exist. None of this would have happened. Elena, you wouldn't have met half the people in your life now." He looked out across the neighborhood. Houses we'd repaired, families we'd met, lives intertwined with ours in ways none of us expected. "Strange, isn't it?" he murmured. "A single choice, changing everything." His words settled into me like a truth I'd always known, but never articulated. One act of kindness doesn't just save a moment, it saves generations. Because somewhere in Montana, a teenager chose to stay alive. Somewhere in our own city, a new mother found safety. Somewhere, a man put down a bottle instead of picking it up. Somewhere, a boy named Michael picked up a hammer instead of giving up on himself. All because my father once stopped on a bridge for a stranger. And because that stranger walked into a hospital cafeteria for me. The ripples weren't stopping, they were still expanding. Circles widening across the world, touching people we'd never meet. Kindness doesn't die. It multiplies. And sometimes, the smallest gesture becomes the one that changes everything.